Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench.
Welcome back to Fighting on Film this week, everybody. And it's a very, very special episode this week as we celebrate our first anniversary.
Can you believe it?
Oh, it's been a whole year. It's insane. It really is. It's absolutely mad.
Almost 50 episodes.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge number. Like I never really tracked how many films I watch, and now I'm very aware of how many films I watch.
Yeah.
In a good way. In an excellent way.
Yeah. That's Matt opening a beer. We are going to drink on this episode. Usually we're dry. You know, we don't drink when we record and stuff just for professionalism. But seeing as it's our first anniversary, we might have a brewski. What are you drinking, Matt?
I'm drinking a Jaipur IPA.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, they are. Yes. They're Matt's brew of choice. I've got Conway Brewery Welsh Pride Bitter. So yeah, our first episode, Matt, was Theirs Is the Glory, and it came out on the 24th of October 2020, if you can believe that.
It's just flown by.
It really has. We just want to thank everyone for following us and listening. And it's been a whirlwind, like 12 months. And we're just we're overjoyed. We can't believe the support and love. And just
it's a real thrill to see people enjoy films along with you.
Yeah,
really
exactly.
Like that part of it.
It's just great, and it's so good to see that a genre that you've loved for absolutely years of your life is still, obviously, there's love for the war movie out there. We know that, but I didn't expect people to just take two younger people seriously as they do every week. It's insane.
It's great. I mean, look at how many questions we've gotten for this AMA show. I mean, the response was fantastic. Some really, really good ones.
So last week on the show, we announced we were going to do the AMA, and then we put out on our Twitter and our Patreon and our Facebook accounts like we were going to do it. We asked some questions, and you guys they came pouring in, didn't they? They
did. I think we did 3 tweets, and every tweet got like half a dozen great questions.
So we've compiled them into a big list. Sorry if we've missed anyone, but we'll try and get for as many as we can. And I think I'll kick us off. So we asked our patrons first. So it'd be our Patreon supporters that will go through first. So Angus McChilly says, how did you guys meet?
Well, it was in the depths of the pandemic when we were stranded on Plague Island. And
we still are.
Well, that's very true. I think we've been following each other on Twitter for a while.
Yeah.
And you messaged me about something about Sten guns.
That was it. Yeah. I was going on Woody's show, and I wanted to make a comparison.
You were doing a show with Woody, and you had to pick like 3 things that. Yeah,
I think it was about like what gun, what overrated like kit. And I said the SG-44 was overrated, and I wanted to use some facts about the Sten gun to sort of do a comparison. So I was like, I know a man will know about that. So I messaged Matt, and then we just got chatting, didn't we? We did. Grew a friendship out of nothing, didn't we, really?
Kind of rare that happens, I suppose, on social media, isn't it, really, when you think about it? But yeah, so we, after a couple of weeks chatting, I think we did something with the Homebrew lads as well, didn't we? We did a watch along of A Bridge Too Far.
Yes, we did on Twitter. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And from that, we just thought, what we should do? I thought, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to do like a war movie podcast.
Yeah, you just messaged me that point blank, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like 2 a.m. or something.
I know. It just occurred to me, like, what would be a fun thing to do while we're all stuck with, not being able to do what we would normally be doing in our everyday lives. I had no idea of what the format would be like or whether it would work, and just thought, let's throw it out there and see whether Rob fancies doing it. And thankfully, you like the idea.
We just ran with it, didn't we?
Yeah.
We never fathomed it would get this far, but we're so pleased that it has. And then when we met in real life for the first time was my birthday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Liverpool.
Yeah, that was really nice. And then obviously since then we did Warfest together and stuff. We're planning for FOF related things and stuff like that. So we just hope that can come off. But yeah, that's the nutshell of how we met. So second question is from Mary Buckman. If you had to choose, what would you prioritize? Historical accuracy or good narrative storytelling and characterization?
Oh, that's a good question.
It's a toughie, isn't it? That?
If you had to choose between historical accuracy and good narrative storytelling and characterization, I suppose it differs, because if you're doing a a film that is based on a true story or actual historical event, then I think historical accuracy is much more important. But if you're doing, a human story set during war, then yeah, good narrative and storytelling and characterization is super important. I mean, look at Kelly's Heroes. That is a film that nails that side of things. But if you're covering like an event like Dunkirk or D-Day or something like that, then you've got to get the basic things right. And it follows on from what we were saying recently about The Forgotten Battle. That was a film that was based on an actual event. So you have to sort of treat that event in a way that conveys it fairly accurately, to my mind. I prefer that in a film. I don't mind liberties for filmmaking purposes being taken and that sort of thing, but I do think it's important to have, at least a little bit of historical accuracy in there.
Yeah. No, I think I'm with you there, Matt. Historical accuracy is fantastic, and we often get asked this one. It's really important. I think it does just boil down to what kind of movie you're making. If you're going to make it, as Matt said, if you're going to make a movie about D-Day, make sure you get everything about D-Day that you can correct. But if you're going to make a madcap adventure film like Kelly's Heroes set in the war, then you can take liberties, because I know as a viewer that your movie isn't going to be as perhaps serious. I'd like both.
Ideally,
if I can. Ideally, I'd love both.
Yeah, if you're going to tell a story well, then you want good narrative and storytelling and characterization, don't you? But yeah, that's a tricky one. And there's two ends of that spectrum, definitely. So Dave Cohen asked, do you have day jobs? How did you get into firearms, Matt? And is Bullshot ever going to be on the pod? So do you have day jobs, Rob?
I'm a carer, full-time carer for my wife in outside of the podcast, but that's not as it sounds like she needs round the clock care, but she has some medical conditions that just make it hard for her to get around some days and things like that. So I'm on hand, and then we recently had a baby, so I'm looking after him. So like full-time dad, full-time carer sort of thing. So that's my day job, and obviously I help run the Fun on Film Twitter and do the editing and my own YouTube channel as well. So that keeps me busy.
Well, you do a lot of the sort of the editing of the pod, don't you? And a lot of the production side. So that's kind of like, that's a lot of work, really, isn't it? When you think about it.
Yeah, it does take up time. Whenever I'm not,
it's some hours editing, isn't it? So
that's it. Yeah, it's like whenever I'm not looking after my little one or helping Katie with things, then I'm pretty much doing pod stuff.
Well, as for me, my day job is I have two. So I split it between being a historian and doing research, working on articles and books, and my side project, The Armourer's Bench. And then my other day job is I'm a defense editor for a couple of North American defense news websites. So I basically write and edit a lot of articles about what's going on right now, sort of thing, militarily. Not an everyday job, but it's kind of interesting.
Matt's our historical weight on the show. He's the one I always go to when he's the reason that we have the alley tally, just because it's his expertise.
Maybe we can talk a bit about the alley tally and where that came from and what it is, because people often ask us, like, what is alley?
So alley's like a slang term for like a bit of kit
that's cool.
That's cool.
It's not
like
issue.
Not issue kit. Yeah. So
and then it's worn in a cool way.
Yeah, and then we used the bastardized version of that slang term. It's like, oh, that's alley, in it, like sort of offshoot of cool.
It's just whatever in the film is cool to us, what we think is interesting. But yeah, we have a whole blog. We have a whole blog on that at fightingonfilm.com.
Yeah, we do actually.
Just to explain and answer that question, because we do get asked it quite a bit, and we should really explain it every episode. But we're a bit lax there, aren't we?
Bullshot, is that going to be Bullshot? Probably at some point, I guess.
So if we cover bagels, then Bullshot's going to get covered. They were made around the same time, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like late 80s bagels. I think. Yeah.
So I think so. I think one day.
Yeah, any film that is war related can probably get on.
That's the beauty of
It's the beauty of
finding
the
on
show.
film, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we can wangle the term of the definition of the feature just to get a film on. We did it with Commando, didn't we?
We did.
So the next question. So Thomas McCall asks, if you could star in any already made war film, either as an extra or a main actor, what one would it be and why?
There's a couple of things there. Would you want to be in a film that covers a really interesting event, or would you want to be in a film with a really cool cast because you get to hang out with the cast? You know, would you want to be in The Dirty Dozen to like chat with Sutherland and Bronson and Lee Marvin and stuff, or would you want to be in A Bridge Too Far to sit in a scout car with Michael Caine? Or would you want to be in Paratrooper to push Stanley Baker out of
that Wellington or wherever it was? No, I think I'd actually want to be in Kelly's Heroes. Okay. I'd like to be one of the one of the tank crew extras or something.
Yeah,
I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, it would be. It looked like a fun movie to work on
because the production. You got Don Rickles like making everyone crack up behind the scenes. I think that'd be a good romp.
Of course it would. You got Savalas and Clint Eastwood,
Yeah, exactly. I assume everyone would be just quite good to chat to.
Yeah.
And American kit's comfy as well, so that'd be
that's true. I mean, after our APA episode with Sebastian and the lads, I think I wouldn't mind of being a member of the APA and doing all the Market Garden stuff in Bridge Too Far. That'd be great.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Nick Lahuri asks, what is your favourite film ever and why? Like, that's not a hard question, Nick.
My favourite film ever would probably be something like Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
Maybe Fargo. I quite like Coen Brothers films. I quite like that sort of dark humour, like madcap sort of adventure. I quite like that.
It's such a hard question. I immediately thought of a few classics like The Ipcress File with Caine. Love that film. So beautifully shot, really interesting. It's Len Dayton's book. Jackie Brown, really like Jackie Brown, the Tarantino movie. Wayne's World is just a classic comedy. I just really love that film. I don't know why. That's a tricky one. And I think it changes like day to day.
Yeah, it does.
And there'll be dozens that I've forgotten about because I have a terrible memory.
Because if it had been me like 10 years ago, I'd have said Leon.
But, yeah, that's a great movie. Heat,
not now.
Heat's a great movie in that vein.
Heat, Fifth Element, I quite enjoy. Quite like that one.
There's movies that we've covered like Commando, Guilty Pleasure. Last of the Mohicans, beautiful film.
I like Breakfast Club as well.
Oh yeah, that's a good movie. Yeah.
Paul Hicks, our resident model sculptor, his work is absolutely fantastic. If you've not seen it on Twitter, check it out. He says, what's your favourite non-historical war film? With a follow-up question, what snacks are you eating while watching?
Non-historical?
Yeah, so I would say Aliens, because that is a war movie. That's a Nam film without Vietnam in it.
Basically.
For me. Yeah. And then my snack would be, was it Cool Original Doritos?
Oh yeah.
Bag of them.
Not tangy cheese.
Nah, I'm a Cool Original guy.
Okay. For me, non-historical war film, it's got to be Starship Troopers, I think.
Nice.
Starship Troopers is just sort of such an interesting film on its own. With the source material that comes from. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. With the source material it comes from and the way it sort of approaches the source material and the reaction it got and everyone takes it at face value. It's just a really interesting one. And I think snack-wise, there's these really great, I think, kettle chip, rosemary flavour crisps, which are like, they're the peak, really.
Matt, you're very bougie about your snacks.
That was a bougie snack. It's got to be said.
£1 Dorito bag.
That or some...
Let's get my kettle chips in.
That or some sour cream Pringles.
You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Next question, Matthew.
Right. So the next question into the ones from Twitter. Neil Rodder asks, if Hanks and Spielberg gave you the choice to pick the next 10-part series after Masters of the Air, what would it be?
I would use one of my own family's histories to base it on, but I would do a series.
So you get that sweet writers, producer.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course I would. Yeah. So I would do it about the British Army would be my force that I'd set it in, and I'd do it from January to May 1945, and it would be from Operation Black Hawk in the Ruhr, going up to Operation Varsity, and the sweep through to Hamburg, with the 7th Guards Armored Division.
That's a good choice.
7th Armored, sorry.
Based on your granddad's diary.
Yeah, based on his diary, because I think there's enough in there to do some really great set piece episodes. Love to throw some money at that.
Well, Spielberg and Hanks have got that money. So yeah,
if listening, chaps.
Exactly. For me, if I was going to go for like that personal side of things, my granddad was a POW on the Burma Railway.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I always thought that doing a show following his joining up in Preston, and ended up in Singapore, and the fighting around Singapore. He actually got onto a boat, but it was bombed and sank.
Wow.
Yeah, so he ended up being captured by all accounts. We just don't know enough about his story. Sadly, we don't have a diary. I interviewed him when I was about 15, I think, for a project, and we have a little bit of detail, but he never really liked speaking about it, so we don't know the full extent. But I think that side of the war is something that really, could deserve. I mean, there have been series in the past that have touched on it. I think the BBC did in the 80s did like a women's internment camp in Burma. Tenko, yeah, that was it. Thank you. Can't remember the name. Did a show based on that, but like a really serious, deep dive, big budget look at the Burma Railway and Changi and that kind of thing will be special. But I mean, throwing it back to the Pitch Perfect episode we did about 6 months ago now, we had loads of great suggestions from listeners about potential mini series ideas that were great. Dieppe and all sorts of really interesting stuff. I think
that actually segues brilliantly into our next question. Dean Barden asks, "What's the story you would like to see made into a film?"
The Gloucesters. I mean, the Gloucesters at Imogen will be a war movie I would love to see.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, that would be quite something. I mean, for me, I wrote down here, I think I might have mentioned it on the Pitch Perfect, but the story of the American Rangers at Dieppe.
Lester J. Bandito on Twitter asked a very good question, which I think would make a great show all on its own. Actually.
Yeah, I think we're going to spin this one off, aren't we, eventually?
Yeah, people had lots of good suggestions as well. Who is the greatest on-screen sergeant? My money is on this guy, but there's a lot to choose from. And of course, this guy is Colour Sergeant Bourne in Zulu, which is a fantastic choice.
Presenting his Martini Henry, wasn't it? There was the picture. And then that got picked up by everyone, and they sort of like tweeting their favourites. For me, I mean, I might split the room, but I really like Tom Sizemore as Sergeant Horvath.
Really?
I mean, I just like his chemistry with Tom Hanks in the movie. I think it was great casting. He has some great lines, where he's like, I thought you were my mother. When he throws his helmet at the guy at the end. I just like his character. I think it was the first sort of person I'd seen on screen who, because I think when I first saw Saving Private Ryan, I hadn't seen Full Metal Jacket. So it was the first non-butch representation of a soldier that I'd ever seen in a film. And he's like a heavy set-ish guy. He wasn't peak physical fitness sort of geek sort of guy. When I look back at that movie, that says a lot more about people in war than I thought it did. Because obviously,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
He's someone who's joined up who's not maybe in great physical shape, but he's still needed. And I like how that's everyone of every walk of life was involved in the Second World War. And I like, even if that's not meant to be a thing, I like that how it shows that. And that's, I think, another reason I like Horvath. What about you, Matt?
Oh, there's so many, because it's that classic NCO trope, isn't it? And it's in every war movie, whether it be a British war movie, American war movie, or foreign language, non-English speaking war movies. Yeah, you've got everyone from Sergeant Steiner in Cross of Iron to Arlie Ermy in not only Full Metal Jacket, but also this Siege of Firebase Glory. He's great in that as an NCO. You've got Hartnell in
Way Ahead.
Well, take a pick. Way Ahead, Yangtze Incident, Carry On Sergeant. Even you got loads. It's difficult. It's tricky to sort of pick one. I think Arlie Ermy is going to be my pick, and I think it's going to be left field right now, and I'm going to go for his character in Siege of Firebase Glory.
Fair enough. It's your answer. It's your AMA.
We'll see if when we come back to that and do a show, we'll see whether that's
go more in depth. Yeah. So 1940 Medal Campaign asks, he's got a few questions actually. But his first one is, which terrible war movie do you think is ripe for a remake?
The Rebels of PT 26.
Yeah, that's quite a recent
whatever
one.
the fuck it was called.
Yeah.
I just need a remake of some great close-ups of bulkheads. That's what I need. I can't wait to cover that because that's an incredible film. That's tricky. I mean, what do you class as a terrible war movie, Rob?
I mean, I didn't like Dunkirk 2017, but I wouldn't say it's terrible. I mean, maybe a good Dunkirk remake.
Yeah,
because the 58 one it's not perfection, but it's a damn bloody sight better movie than Dunkirk 17.
Yeah,
I'd probably say a good Dunkirk film would be nice.
I don't know. It's tricky. It depends on what you could class as terrible. I mean, you know what? A good remake of Force 10 from Navarone would be good because that's not a great movie.
That might be quite cool.
Oh no, even I mean, it's a great cast, but it's not a great movie. Even more in that vein, Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, okay, I'll have you there. Like a big budget Ardennes film would be quite nice. Yeah, that's good. With the right tanks this time.
Yeah, right tanks.
Next question, Matt.
Next question. It's also from 1940 Medal Campaign. Hollywood has given the green light to make the ultimate Men on a Mission movie. Using characters from all your favorite movies, who would you cast in your squad?
Okay, so we have a 4-man team. We both pick 2.
Yeah.
And our mission would be to extract prisoners of war from like a fort or something. I don't know.
Okay. We're going like classic. Yeah.
I would go for my first squad character. I'd have Kelly's Heroes as the leader. Okay. Yeah. So I assume if you pick them out of the movie, they're armed with what they're armed with in the movie. That's where I'm going to
that would make sense to me.
Yeah. It's okay. Definitely. Kelly for the leader.
Arnie from Commando, because he's gonna bring everything possible.
He got the brawn,
weapon wise. He can
use any weapon.
Because he's like a video game character, and they're all present, all of the time, even if they're not in shot. My second that I would have would be Edward Fox from Force 10 from Navarone. He's an explosive expert. And he'd be super useful, blowing the guard towers and laying some traps as we're getting the prisoners away. I think that'd be
that's a good one. I would have Stanley Baker's Corporal Riker from Helen Korea.
Okay,
he's that hot-headed gung ho, and he's got a Bren.
Yeah, you got Stanley Baker on the Bren, and you got Arnie on the M60.
Yeah. I'd have that. I mean, that is obscure, but I'd have that.
I like it. So
there, that's your fighting on film heroes there.
The FOF4.
The FOF4, yeah. The 4, to quote a really obscure Jack Hawkins series from the 60s, that's your 4 Just Men.
Oh, yeah. Your Just Men reference. Nice.
Nice, yeah. So I think it's me with the next question, isn't it? So Nick L asks, Geordie Finch 99 on Twitter. He's got a quick fire round. So he says, 1, best foreign language war film. 2, best hidden gem war film. 3, best / war film.
E.g., like war film heist.
Hybrid. 4, oldest war film you've seen. And then 5, oldest war film you want to see. And 6, war film you'd make if money was no object.
Oldest war film you've seen? Well, the oldest war film I've watched recently was Mons 1926.
That'd be me as well. Yeah.
I'd really like to see Ypres 1925 in full. I didn't get a chance to watch all of that when we were doing the show with Andy a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure there's too many that predate that. There's a few sort of silent pictures that would be interesting to cover sort of pre-war. There's some that cover like Victoria Cross actions in the Indian Mutiny that were made in like 1909 that were really interesting. So that would cover my oldest I want to watch.
Okay, I'd go for that as well. So for my best foreign language, I liked Zvezda or Ninth Company, 2 Russian war films. The Spedster is Second World War, and Ninth Company is Afghan War in the 80s. My best hidden gem, before we covered it, I would have said Helen Korea. I'd still go for that. Or Yesterday's Enemy with Stan Baker. I really like that one.
Ooh, nice.
Slash war film. I'm going to be cheeky. I'm going to say League of Gentlemen with Jack Hawkins. And I know it's not technically a war film, but they're all
sort of ex-servicemen, aren't they?
They're all veterans, and there is a national service barracks in there.
Yeah, they steal the Stens, don't they? I think.
Yeah, they get Sterlings and Stens from there. Yeah.
For me, best foreign language war film. I really liked Panafilov's Men.
Yeah, that was good.
But I absolutely love Westerplatte Resists. Looking forward to covering that one at some point.
Yeah, we do got a guest lined up for that.
We have best hidden gem. I would say It Happened Here. I watched it recently, and that's a '60s amateur movie about what Britain would be like if the Nazis had invaded and taken control. That's a really interesting film. Yep. So that would be my hidden gem pick. Best slash, I think it would be Three Kings for a war movie, heist movie.
It's good.
Keeping it on the classic. I mean, there's not many sort of like slash.
There's
you get
not really,
war horror, you get war heist, war comedy. Obviously, it's a good movie.
It's underrated, that.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think I've covered them.
A war film you'd make if money was no object.
A Retreat from Kabul, 1847. That'd be beautiful. That would be beautifully cinematic. But yeah.
And then no object, like, doesn't matter if it fails. I'd probably make. I mean, I'm obsessed with it at the moment because I keep making videos about them on my YouTube channel. But I'd make a movie about
what's coming.
The Belgian United Nations Command and the Battle of Hak Tang Mi. I'd make that.
Oh my god, I'd watch the hell out of that.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Belgium's only Korean War movie.
Yeah, that would be obscure. Right. Next question, Matt. I think it's 1940 medal campaign again.
It is. If you could be characters in any war movie or series, what would you both be? So that's a variation on another one we had earlier.
So does he mean like be forever? Like I would morph into them?
Oh, you'd have to, like, not just in the film. That's you forever.
That's you
like,
forever.
Go into Tesco as Kelly from Kelly's Heroes.
That'd be hilarious. Okay, if I could be a character, but I want to be someone who survives the movie. That would be a bit silly.
I want to be Kane playing Joe Vandeleur.
That's quite good.
Then I'd have some charisma and be quite suave.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have some stories. You wouldn't want to be Stanley Baker in Paratrooper.
No, because he dies. He falls to his death. They do my guy so dirty in that. I love Stan Baker. They do so dirty in that.
He's so gung ho on that plane, though.
Maybe Stan Baker as Bennett. I'd like to be him because he's a bit of a twat. I think you could I'm not like that in real life, so it would maybe just be nice to be that way for a bit, see what it's like.
What about Stan Baker in The Last Grenade?
No, never. No, never again. Okay.
Next question. If money was no object, what battle or conflict from any period of history would you like to see filmed? Now I'm gonna twist this because we have a couple of similar ones, but filmed, would you class that as
out of our hands?
Yeah. So if as in filmed at the actual battle, or filmed as a film?
Like, so if you were scanning IMDb one day and you'd be like new releases, and if you saw it, you go, ooh, maybe that, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's coming up next year. It's the 40th anniversary, but I'd like to see maybe like a new Falklands War film. Maybe Port Stanley, or maybe maybe a naval film set in Bomb Alley.
Arden or something.
Yeah. In Arden, yeah.
In a similar vein, I was thinking a Malaya, and a Malayan agency film would be really interesting, because we've gotten sort of all the conflicts. I mean, there's a new Dutch movie out about the Dutch Indonesian War, post-colonial conflict, and that's the same region, obviously, and so it'd be interesting to get like a Malayan emergency movie from a British perspective.
So Hugo Drax asks, He's got two questions. He asks, what are your favourite Second World War films and what are your favourite films out of the war genre? Keep up the good work, he says. Thanks, Hugo.
Good questions. Tricky as always, but at least we've narrowed it down to Second World War films, so I can kind of try and pick one.
Start off strong.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say favourite Second World War film for me would be, I'd have two or three, and I'd probably say Cruel Sea, Theirs is the Glory, and Yes, It Is Enemy, probably if I had to have three. Quite like those ones.
Yeah, Theirs is the Glory is definitely in my list.
It was the first one we ever covered, and
it is, and it's
got a special place.
Such a special film as well. It's really interesting. Merrill's Marauders, that's a film I really love. Yesterday's Enemy is a good shout, but I would say The Hill.
Okay,
because that's a kind of a war movie that is not standard fare, is it?
Take him to the mortuary. It's a great line. I love it.
It's so good. What else? I mean, Save It Private Ryan's something that's always in contention.
People love to hate on it, but it is a good movie.
I know it's been a bit of a revision, hasn't there?
A bit unfairly, I think.
Maybe, yeah. What are your favourite films outside of the
favourite films outside the genre? I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I like Coen Brothers movies. I like Space Jam.
Space Jam, the original.
I go back to these sort of films because they're comfort movies.
I bet there's a film you didn't expect to hear on the episode, people. That's
yeah. No, I'm a bit of a basketball fan outside of like FOF. So yeah, I like
completely valid.
Because like Michael Jordan stuff was like a bit of a hero. So I do like Space Jam.
I like Wes Anderson movies, so I'm going to say Steve Zissou in The Life Aquatic because it's the only. It was for the longest time the only Wes Anderson film with like a gun battle in it. Yeah. He has a little.
I like Fantastic Mr. Fox. That's a great one.
It's a good film. That's so nice. Yeah, it's a nice film.
And Jarvis Cocker turns up, and I'm like, yeah,
he does it. Yeah. So next question is from Brian Williams. What are your best death scenes in a war film? Alan!
Yeah, oh God, yeah.
It's Sandy, isn't it?
It's got to be Sandy for me, I think, as well. It's so sad. Yeah.
If you don't feel yourself welling up when Sandy gets killed in Wild Geese, then
tears.
It's just. I mean, we didn't even mention Sandy for the best on-screen sergeant.
No, we didn't. But his death is quite very memorable.
And Sandy is a top on-screen NCO.
He is.
He's top 10 for me easily. Top 5 maybe. Any man that goes into a combat zone and everyone else is picking Uzis and picks a Sterling submachine gun is all right in my book. He's a man of taste.
He is very much so. It's not the right wording, but I do like the bit in The Bridge Too Far where the chap tries to go and get the drop container.
Oh yeah,
with the barrows in it, and he gets killed. I do quite like that because it's quite poignant, isn't it?
It is. I know what you mean.
It sticks with you, that scene. I think that's a good scene. And then there's the scene in The Cruel Sea when Erickson has to make the choice to depth charge where the men are in the water. Because that is just it's one of the best. I think it's probably one of the best scenes of 50s British cinema because it's just so well shot. Hawkins is on his A game. The pressure of the action, emotional hit, and then how that affects him after. And you get the Dutch seamen who they've picked up before, or the Norwegian seamen who come in and go, look, we understand, and it's like, from mariner to mariner, and they have a drink together, thanking them for saving their lives.
Yeah.
It's the war, the whole bloody war. I just love it. And the fact that Hawkins didn't get like an Oscar for that movie is just.
Sticking with Oscar-worthy performances, what about Stanley Baker's death in Paratrooper?
No, it's quite a shocking death, I must admit.
It is, because he's there so gung-ho, explaining that parachuting's nothing.
They overdub him for once.
They do. It's not Paul Stan's voice.
Considering it's the same year as Cruel Sea, which is even worse.
It's insane. But yeah, and then he drops out of the plane and his chute doesn't deploy properly, and he falls to his death. And it's a shocking death.
Yeah,
it's not the best death scene in a war film, but it's an interesting one. What do you think of Tom Hanks's death in Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah, it is up there, isn't it? I think because for so long people were like, oh, he shot the Tiger tank and it blew up. It's like that was overshadowing it for a while. Then people were like, no, it's the P-51, like hitting it with a rocket. It's a good end to a powerful performance, isn't it? Yet again, it's a well shot end to it, because you know he's dead at the start, so you know it's coming. You don't know when.
True. Yes.
So that's a good whole circle arc there.
Stephen Young asks, those custard creams in the radio stores in A Bridge Too Far have always bothered me. Any thoughts on biscuit authenticity in movies?
See, I've never thought of that.
No. Were custard creams around
in
1944?
They have to be.
Surely they'd be rationed.
I mean, maybe not for the officer class, perhaps.
Perhaps
they got
not
their ways.
Yeah. Caveating off that, I mean, what biscuits do you think should be in films? What biscuit do you think should have appeared in The Cruel Sea, for instance? What should they have had after their snorkers? Maybe a ginger biscuit to settle their stomachs.
Maybe a nice bourbon
after eating all that sausage.
Yeah, a bit of bourbon.
Yeah. I've never considered biscuit authenticity.
I've never considered. I mean, maybe we have to have a biscuit feature.
We need a biscuit expert. That's what we need.
We
need someone that's an expert in historical biscuits.
I mean, Christ, we've done some niche films on this show, but I think biscuits of great British war films would be.
What biscuit should Miss Grant have offered to the fifth columnist?
Oh, fruit shortcake.
Okay. Yeah. That's not a biscuit, but okay.
It's a shortcake. It's a biscuit.
Shortbread.
Shortcake biscuit. Shortbread, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Before she bats him over the head with a Webley. Okay. So this one comes from the Wargamers forum, and it was a question me and Matt were waxing lyrical about the other night. And it's, what is the most alley small arm? I think we're unanimous, aren't we?
It's the Piat, isn't it? It's the Piat.
So Piat, yeah. I quite like the Sterling because of you.
Yeah. I mean, I love the Sterling because I wrote a book about it and spent a long time looking at them and, researching them. I mean, and Sandy chose one in Wild Geese, so they're good. I've
got quite a penchant, or a penchant if you're from comprehensive school. I like the Mark V Sten.
Yeah, with or without the foregrip.
Both.
Okay.
Because if you're in Malaya or Korea, you got it without it usually.
True.
Because that had quite a bit of longevity.
Did, yeah. Yeah, oh God, yeah. Well into the 60s.
I think kind of gets forgotten about because people just think, it's just an airborne weapon.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I think it was quite unfairly sort of forgotten about, and it did get used.
Yeah. I mean, every film I watched, every war movie I watched as a kid always had an MP40 in it.
They were, yeah.
They were. I mean, it seemed at one point that every soldier in the Wehrmacht was armed with an MP40. If you watched certain classic war movies. Yeah, but the Piats are cool. I mean, it's only been in like four or five films. Sadly, didn't make an appearance in The Forgotten Battle, which I'm disappointed about.
It's a shame.
They could have been in a horse packed full of Piats.
That's what they had in it, Matt. That's why
my headcanon.
That's why Lonsdale didn't have enough bombs and Piats. Because that horse went down that had Lonsdale's Piat stocks in it. We've salvaged that movie. There you go.
We have. The headcanon that's made it absolutely way more enjoyable for me.
So the next question is from, I don't know his full name, but it's Kihar, formerly of Dissecting Worlds, at Dissecting Worlds on Twitter. You know who you are. He asks us, if you were dressing a film like Richard III, what combo of kit, clothes, vehicles, weapons would you put together for the ultimate alley army?
That's interesting. So Richard III, it's the adaptation with Ian McKellen. It's sort of Nazi-esque, and there's Lewis guns and
dystopia, isn't it?
I mean, it's got to be Denison's, hasn't it? Really, there's got to be Denison's.
Yeah. So I've written down.
Of course you have. Of course you have. So for me, it's got to be Denison's.
Right.
You know what? Let's alter this a little bit. 68 pattern Paris smocks.
Ooh, DPM ones.
Yes.
Okay. So anyone who doesn't know, quickly, a 68 pattern a 68 Para smock is essentially just a Denison smock that with DPM camo.
Yeah, so 68 Para smocks, original M16s, M16A1s, and basically just going for sort of like 60s British Army in Northern Ireland and Malaya, aren't I, at this point? Indonesia, rather.
In Humber scout cars and things.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a cool look. I mean, BAOR is a very cool look and is very sort of recognizable. That 70s period, the 60s through to the 70s of BAOR.
I'm with you there.
British Army on the Rhine, sorry. Weapons wise, L4 Brens, the 7.62 conversion.
This is Matt's like paramilitary force in his dystopian picture.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It truly is. 66 mil laws, for the anti-tank element.
Mm-hmm.
It's Sterling's, obviously.
Okay. So Sterling's I would have my paramilitary force in my movie, my Maguire force, as I'm going to call them.
Okay.
So I would have them in World War II first pattern smocks. So that's like the 3/4 zip ones.
Right.
I'd have them in black 58 pattern webbing. And they would be wearing Mark III helmets.
Oh, really?
Like Mark III British helmets. Because I quite like the tortoise shells. Yeah, I quite like them.
Okay.
Khaki slacks with ankle putties.
You see, I go for the anklets.
Oh, okay, you want webbing anklets,
or maybe jungle boots.
Right. Okay, I get it. Yeah. So then, just for me, just regular like ammo boots, and then I would arm them with. I mean, I know Matt said M16s, but I want them to be armed with the M16s out of Escape from New York. Like they took the barrel shroud off.
Oh yeah, and put the grenade launcher on.
Weird long barrel carbine. I quite like that. Transport, I'd have like Daimler Dingoes, but like towing, almost like horse boxes, but with like men in. So they just have like they'd have Daimler Dingoes, but then they'd have like a trailer variant for like anti-tank and anti-air. So it's just like loads of Daimler Dingoes just pulling all sorts of different carts.
Everyone gets a dingo.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, I was saying to Matt over Twitter, I was like, on the set, no one would be able to hear each other over the roar of Daimler engines. Action! What? Turn your dingo off. I can't hear it. But that would be my Maguire.
Not Bedford's then.
I mean, maybe there'd be a few beddies, but I thought it'd be hilarious just to have like 100 Daimler Dingoes just like running around.
Because Richard III is hilarious, obviously.
No, I know, but like you've got to. If there's going to be a scenes where like men are going to have to like storm a fort or something, turning up like in horse boxes towed by.
Would they dismount from their dingoes to storm the castle?
No, the men inside would be like shooting the Brens, but then the men in the horse box-esque APC armored trailers would get out.
Right. I swear to God, the British Army tested something very similar to that.
Did they?
Oh, in the 50s, 60s.
Well, there you go. So yeah, that's our weird military forces. If we ever go mad with power, then if you see a Daimler coming down the road,
I mean, the black 58 webbing that's a good choice.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, I used to airsoft in a set of that and never let you down.
So next we have Waitman, Dr. Waitman, Bourne, who has asked, what is the fakest prop ever used? Can be scenery, prop, vehicle mock-up, etc. I really like this question. So the first thing that popped into my head was that terrible machine gun in Cockleshell Heroes.
Yeah, that is quite funny.
That looks like a Lewis gun, but it's basically just wood. It just looks terrible. It's supposed to the pan mag on it is clearly just a piece of wood that's been cut out in a circle.
I quite like the 30 cal mock-up in Objective Burma.
Oh yeah, the weird Vickers gun that is made to look like
it's quite good. Yeah.
There's some proper terrible Browning 30 cals on the top of the tanks in Tears. Sorry, Valley of Tears.
Valley of Tears, the new thing.
Yeah, the Israeli series. There's one lad that is doing his best to make it look real, and he's shaking hell out of it like it's firing. But there's a couple of like shots where they accidentally show the pistol grip, and it's just It's clearly just a couple of bits of balsa wood painted black.
Right.
So yeah, that's up
I
there.
quite like all the weird, like armored car mock-ups you get in the 60s and 50s.
I was thinking about this.
Quite like them.
The one in 633 Squadron is pretty terrible.
It's good. It's a bad good though, isn't it?
It's pretty awful though, isn't it? It's like there's that weird sort of like tall sort of, I can't even describe it. It's that weird. It's like they've built up like a slightly angled front piece and then put a light and a machine gun mount on top of I think it was a Humber.
Might have been.
So, yeah.
I like the Dingo myself.
No, I think it was a Dingo. I think you're right. Just paint the Dingo grey and put a cross on it for God's sake. Like, but that was just ugly.
That's quite good. I like that question. So this comes from, next question is from Wojciech Lugowski.
I think it's Wojciech.
Wojciech. But he asks, what is your favourite scene from all of the war movies you've seen?
Ooh, that's tricky. That's another tricky one.
As I said earlier, I love the scene in Raw Sea where he has to make the decision about depth charging them and in the water, just because of the way it's shot and
the emotional weight of it. Yeah, look at us saying the exact same thing.
I know. I'd go for that.
How long have we been doing this podcast? You know what? I think it's Michael Caine and his platoon of good bayonet men when they come into action in Zulu.
That's a good one.
And the bit where he's on the roof. Oh, that's such a great sequence where he's fighting on the roof and it's on fire and there's a bit of teamwork between, I think it's him and Corporal Hicks.
Yeah.
And the way that Hicks jumps off that roof knocks that Zulu off it. Oh, it's such a dynamic, beautifully shot scene. And Caine is just pure money because he drops one Zulu with a martini. And then he pulls his revolver and just starts shooting them as they're running past.
It does look good in movies when people drop their primary and get out their secondary. It does look good.
It does. I mean, that must be like one of the first sort of maybe Western films that you see someone like drop their primary and go secondary.
Yeah, perhaps it is. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great sequence, and I always love that. That's one of my favorite scenes. But there's so many. That's another one of those things that you
it would change month to month for me as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course. There's so many that are like coming into my brain right now that I can't sort of
can't get it down into words. It's like with someone asks you a question about a war film now. A door opens and all the ideas try to jam through, and it's just the one that gets through first, isn't it? It's like in The Simpsons where they show Mr. Burns' like diseases, and they're all trying to get through the door. That's what I always say.
So what you're saying is we're immortal.
Yeah. Yeah. You've seen the episode too. So Ken Reaney asks, could we cope with the alley in Sea of Sand?
I mean, there is some good stuff in there, isn't there?
Great stuff in there, isn't there? Yeah. Vickers guns, Stens. Everyone's got a Sten in that film.
Yes, even the Germans.
There's a good mock-up of an Italian scout car.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and they sort of charge it with a truck, don't they?
Yeah, and shoot it with a Vickers gun.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to doing that film. I really like it.
I know, you've been wanting to do that one for a while, haven't you?
I have been,
I mean, there's a few, but yeah, definitely. But yeah, Sea of Sand is a good one. That's kind of a sort of hidden gem as well, a bit, isn't it, really?
It is. It's one of the only LRDG films out there. So that is a bonus for it.
You would think there'd be more, but I mean, we are getting a SAS series.
We are, yes. Yeah, I think we could cope, Ken, I think. Just about.
Just about. Andy Moody asks, 1, is there, in your opinions, a golden age of war movies? And if so, what is it and why? 2, what makes a more engaging film about warfare? The grand epic, or the very micro personal story? 3, what, in your guys' view, is behind the enduring appeal of the genre? There's a lot there. We should unpack that, I think. So, question 1. Is there, in your opinions, a golden age of war movies? And if so, what is it and why? I think, to be honest, there is a golden age. And it's got to be like the 50s through to the late 60s.
Yeah, I think so.
There was so many, the pure output that was being made in that period where it was just film after film after film after film.
That says a lot about the period of the 50s, isn't it? Because you're trying to come to terms with what happened.
Yeah.
And the film as a genre is allowed to get back on its feet as well post-war. So yeah, I think the 50s is that starting point, and there's just so many.
You got the 80s too,
top tier,
where you had all of those Vietnam movies coming through.
Yeah, that resurgence, that little bit of Vietnam trend that was there for a bit. For me, I'd say 50s is golden age, golden era.
Yeah.
Just
especially
for
British war movies.
Yeah, exactly. British at least. All the stars are there. You got the Dam Busters, Cruel Sea, Dunkirk.
Yeah. Dunkirk.
All these great films, one after another. None of them are flops. None of them are bad movies. So I think that probably that. And they endure. Those movies endure as well.
They do. They
might be 70 years old at this point, or
Yeah.
But they still are very watchable. They still are very relevant movies as well. They're not. Some of them haven't aged a day. Even though that it's not CGI, it's not how we make movies now, but they do really hold up. And I think that's why they endure, because they are at their core. There are a lot of human stories in there. So I think that maybe that's why they transcend their era. What about you, Matt? You'd agree?
Yeah, I think you're right there. Those films of that 50s into the 60s period of there's so much being made in so many different sort of niches as well. They move out of the tropes, and films start to be examining different aspects of the war, and I think that's important too. But yeah, so question 2 out of Andy's 3 there is, what makes a more engaging film about warfare, the grand epic or the very micro personal story? I really like that, because you've got really great epic movies, and then you have really bad epic movies, and then you have great personal story movies and pretty flat personal story movies, don't you? So, on an epic scale, you've got films like Waterloo, The Longest Day, Lawrence of Arabia, all these really amazing cinematic, huge, beautifully shot, big budget, high stakes movies. And then you get really interesting personal stories as well. So, the movie about Bill Sabo, and a recent one I really like was The 12th Man, the Norwegian movie we talked about on a show and tell a little while back.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one. It doesn't have to be an epic scale. Look at April 9th, the Danish movie. That's a great sort of little look at just one unit, and maybe even just the unit's commander really is the main character. But yeah, what makes an engaging film for you? Is it the big epic, or the?
For me, I think it depends what you're in the mood for as well as a viewer. So, I think grand epic can be good if they hit every beat perfectly. So, like Longest Day is like a grand epic, but not everything lands for me.
Okay.
But it still does, and I'm like that with The Bridge Too Far as well. It's an epic, but not everything lands. Whereas,
I think there are very few that really do.
Exactly, even theirs doesn't land everything. So I think that's quite hard to do properly. But then micro, you can sort of lose something. So I think there's a good middle ground there. But I like the personal story aspect too. But I think it just depends what you want. So I would say, like, an example of the personal story but getting the epic is Cruel Sea, because it's a confined space. You're in a ship, but because of the importance of the Atlantic War, and it does touch on that as well, and how not killing a U-boat one day is going to affect someone else the next. How your actions have weight to a bigger battle. I think that's one of the movies that does it really well, and you get great personal tales in there too. I think maybe that one would be one of those movies. I'd say Dam Busters as well for personal stories.
Yeah. Ideally, it's a personal story with an epic sort of backdrop, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is the ideal. You very rarely nowadays get those epics. Dunkirk, I suppose you could consider.
But then that tried to be epic and have the personal stories.
1917, similar sort of story there.
Yeah, I think 1917 possibly did better. at conveying its personal stories within its grand epicness, because that movie was shot as an epic. But I think Dunkirk, it got muddled.
Yeah. I mean, the timeline stuff in Dunkirk doesn't help that movie, I don't think.
Not at all. Yeah.
I think it just confuses elements of it. But yeah, that's a great question. That's a thought-provoking one, I think. 3. What, in your view, is behind the enduring appeal of the genre? I've said this a few times, but I think it's the fact that war movies are looking at the human condition in one of the most base things that we do, which is fight each other. And within that, there's so much scope artistically to examine interrelationships between people, how they're affected by events. You can tell a love story in a war film. You can make a horror movie in a war movie. You can make a comedy in a war movie. MASH, Kelly's Heroes, countless others. So there's so much with the genre that you can do. There's not many genres that are so clearly defined as war movies that are so adaptable to telling stories on a human level, I think.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that. I think because it's such a debased thing that we choose to do to each other, considering we live on the same planet and we all breathe the same air. Yeah. But you choose to go and kill someone else because of their viewpoint or something they've done, whether it be right or wrong. Because war is it's a part of our history and it's a part of our current times. It never goes away. There are always conflicts. I think they're always just ripe for a film, aren't they? And I think it's as much as the war movie genre has diminished from being a war movie every other month sort of thing, now the war movie for me has become an event movie, i.e. like your Marvel films now. When a big war production comes along, it feels like an event because we're not used to them as much. So you do tend to get less less big budget war movies, but when you get them, they tend to get a big budget thrown at them and they're very interesting in their own right anyway. So I think that's why the genre is still going strong. And I hope that because of 1917 and Dunkirk and etc., that we see a resurgence in it. I mean, maybe when this is getting off topic a little bit, but I think we need more middling budget movies that do the personal thing on the smaller scale to keep it going. But then we need the big event movies to show the execs that they're profitable.
Yeah.
So it's a big circle of,
Yeah, I suppose with the big ones, I suppose you've got to factor in like how accurate they're going to be, and are they going to be? But then
that makes it all the more fun to dissect from here, doesn't it?
It does. But I think you're right there with the smaller movies. It's just a matter of people showing their interest. It's also you've got to have directors and studios taking the chance on more movies as well.
Of course, yeah.
And if they're being put forward, people are going to go see them.
But then now with streaming, does it even matter? Because you're not, when Netflix puts out CG Adaptville or something like Forgotten Battle, whether people like it or not, those movies aren't, because they're on Netflix, you never see Netflix's metrics, you never see Netflix's profitability scale or whatever, they don't share it. So if these movies don't do as well on streaming platforms, that's not going to hurt the movie as much as it would have done if it had a full cinema release and it absolutely bombed, because then you can take a chance on another film if you're on streaming because of the nature of the beast. Whereas if you make a £150 million war movie and it doesn't make its money back, or it's not profitable, or if it's a flop or whatever, that's going to be reflected much harsher because it had a lot more money put into it.
You're right there. You're right. I mean, one huge film can tank a genre for forever, can't it?
Yeah.
But I think thinking about that, I mean, just as sort of like an example, we didn't have a pirate movie for like a decade after Cutthroat Island was made in the 90s because that film bombed, but it was such a big budget. I think unlike that sort of smaller genre, war movies are always going to be there. I don't think they're going to be sort of what's the word I'm looking for?
They're not going to fully die off.
Yeah, the excuse me. we're not going to see the genre completely tanked by a failure, because it's such a
broad.
It is. It's such a broad genre that, as I said earlier, you can do so much within, and it's such a it's such a base human condition to examine.
Agreed.
Fighting each other, conflict. There's so much within that is interesting to writers and directors.
And that echoes Andy's second question, isn't it? About the epic and the personal. There's scope for everything. So Albert Lee asks, how often have you considered selecting movies in languages you don't speak?
Quite often, actually. We've done a few. We've talked about Mosul. We've talked about The King's Choice, 12th Man, some Danish, Norwegian.
We did Panaflov's Men, didn't we?
Panaflov's Men is one that we've done as a main episode.
Yeah.
There's quite a few on our list, isn't there?
Yeah, like the Brooker, Vesterplatte Resists, the NDM Foo French film.
Yeah. There's the French Dieppe movie.
Weekend at Dunkirk.
Dunkirk movie, sorry. There's a Melee. Oh God. There's an Indonesian movie from the 50s that I'd like to cover. There's loads, actually.
Yeah,
there's loads.
And this is a big.
It's getting to them, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the thing, because of the way we do it week to week, and we have that's the, looking at behind the scenes a little bit about the show, because of me and Matt's schedule, we can only do one per week. We can make allowances for special episodes. So The War Below was the first episode we released that wasn't on schedule, but that's because we had the chance to review a brand new film on the press release circuit, so we wanted to put it out then. That's what we agreed with the people who gave us the screener. So that was like an anomaly, but that just comes down to time, really. That and I think that's the great thing about the show, is because of the amount of films we can cover and the amount of things we can get around to, there's room for it all. It's just getting to it. And that's the thing.
And they're coming, because there's some absolutely fascinating ones, like, as you mentioned, Westerplatte, Canal. There's a couple of Dutch movies I'd love to cover. There's a whole host of Russian movies I'd love to cover.
Polish ones as well.
There's a couple of Chinese movies I'd really like to talk about. The 800 and the new one about the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. So there's loads. There's loads coming up.
And we've got a guest for Jenny Grant's going to be coming on talking about 303 Squadron, and we've got Lucinda Ferry's going to be coming and doing Westerplatte with us. So we've got guests lined up for these sorts of films, because we want to give them. We want hearing us bang on about movies is all well and good, but when it's about something that someone can come on and really tell us more and show us and just peel off a little bit more than we can with their expertise, and we would love a movie to get a bigger in-depth look with three people than just me and Matt go, oh, that was a good film about yada yada whoever. We'd much rather give that movie the respect it deserves.
Like it. Yeah, I do like it when people bring their expertise and it adds a fresh layer to looking at a film.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot we do where we look at movies and we do our research beforehand about the historical context of them, etc. And you dig up some great reviews and stuff like that. But there's people that spend entire careers looking at certain areas of history.
Exactly.
And it's brilliant when we can bring someone on to give that amount of depth.
That's what we like, the depth. That's what I was trying to say with Matt.
Next question is from Din de Insalaf. I think it's Steve. The best battle scene in a non-war movie, e.g. Cold Mountain. The Cold Mountain one is good. In it's sort of like a similar vein, I would say the battle in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Okay.
I really like that one. It's a tricky one, because there's quite a few. I know there's a few, but I was struggling to think of a few. But Atonement is that
one. Dunkirk scene there is something else, isn't it? Yeah.
That jumps to mind.
I really love the gun battle in Heat. I know it's obvious, but I mean, gosh, that is a scene and a half, isn't it?
It's not a war movie, but I will allow it.
Yeah, it says a scene in a non-war movie.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, so he means like a historical film. Is that what he means?
Best battle scene in a non-war movie.
What's a gun
I
battle?
think that it is. I think it's
I think
allowable.
it counts.
I think so.
I mean, purely, because it's.
And Andy McNabb was apparently involved in
Yeah,
in
he
the
was
training.
apparently so.
Apparently,
You get Val Kilmer's Reload.
Mm-hmm.
You get Al Pacino running with I forget what weapon he has in it now. It's like some sort of car.
It's an FNC.
That's it, yeah. And that picture of him looking behind it, like looking over his shoulder with the weapon in his hands, that's like one of my favorite promotional stills from a movie ever.
Yeah, Tom Sizemore's got a Galil.
That movie, because when I first saw it, I'd never heard of Heat in my life. I just loved the actors involved. It was when I was at uni. My mate was like, "You should watch Heat, Rob. You'd love it." When I was at uni doing drama, and I watched it, and I wasn't expecting this big gun battle, because this is like pre-streaming days almost. Like Netflix was kind of a new thing, so it was still when you had to like, get a DVD of something. He lent me his, and I was like, "Mate, that gun battle was like something else." He's like, "Yeah, I knew you'd love it," and it's one of those just great gun battles of film.
It's always on all of the lists, isn't it? It's
so good.
So Toman, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. There's a Brad Pitt movie with Harrison Ford called The Devil's Own, and it begins with like a shootout in Northern Ireland. I think Brad Pitt is in the IRA, and there's AKs, MAC-10s, MP5s, SA-80s, which is rare. You don't see a lot of SA-80s in films, and obviously, there's M16A1s, and it's just
doesn't the 30 cal in the Saracen go off a bit?
I think so. Yeah, there's definitely But it's such an interesting like little sequence. It's so well shot and conducted.
It's a nice little compact action sequence.
It's like, and you don't see this sort of big Hollywood treatment of Northern Ireland.
No, you don't
very often either. So
it's a very inherently British thing when we cover it on our media, isn't it? Like in TV and film, it's inherently a very British thing.
But it's how accurate it is, I don't know, but it's a heck of a sort of gun battle. Yeah, and that's one that always that jumped out to me when I was trying to think of that, because it's like 4 minutes of just chaos.
Yeah, let and rip. Yeah. Well, next question is from Matt Bone, our friend over at History Hack, and he asks us, favorite aerial shot in a war movie, as in taken with real/virtual camera in the air. Ooh. Now I know what I want to say.
Go on.
But I don't know if we're both going to say it.
Go on.
In Longest Day with the French commandos, that aerial tracking shot is just something else.
That is up there with the scene from is it You Only Live Twice, the Connery Bond movie, and
right?
The fight scene on the roof.
Yeah, it's not only is it a great aerial sequence, but the continuity of it is
that tracking shot is beautiful.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's Ouistreham, isn't it? The attack on the casino.
It's so well choreographed.
It is, and they have a pier too, so that's just a winner.
I think it's just seeing that mass of men moving.
Yeah, it gives a lot of scale, doesn't it?
There's something about that. It's just so nice.
That's a great choice. Recently we talked about the Sutherland shot from
scene in Yangtze. Yeah, that is nice. That is nice.
That was good. There's lots of stuff from Battle of Britain that's really great.
I quite like the scene in Full Metal Jacket where they're in the Chinook. Not Chinook, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Is it a Chinook they're in? Or Wessex?
I know that it's not.
I don't know the helicopter make.
Oh, God. It's a Sikorsky.
Sikorsky.
That is good. I mean, there's few scenes that match the Ride of the Valkyries sort of impact.
Yeah.
Brian Taylor asks, which film have you sat through that has been the hardest to get to the end of, as it was so bad?
I think, me and Matt watched this awful movie. I think we put it up on Twitter a few months ago, but it's become like a bit of a FOF touchstone movie when we want to explain a bad war movie. It was called D-Day, the 6th of June, I think, or like, it's got a couple of names, but it was made by the Asylum, and it's a D-Day film with Nick Cage's son in it.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those bargain bin,
he's the fattest Ranger Colonel ever.
Bottom of the barrel sort of rubber M1 Garand, green like dress shirt buttoned up war movies you've ever seen. It's just, there's no attention to detail done in anything. It's purely...
It was absolutely dire.
Such a bad one.
Well, what about the Rebels of PT 256 or whatever it was called?
109 or whatever it was. That's the most recent one.
Danny Trejo that we watched the other day.
I mean, I know Asylum are known for not making great movies, but like, you just feel sorry for everyone.
You see, the thing is, with that Rebels of PT whatever it is film, like, I wanted to watch through to the end just to see like how bad it would get.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, when a German has a modern AR-15.
Yeah, they almost become like guilty pleasures.
That's bad. That's really bad.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a tricky one to think. I mean, what is a bad film that hasn't been enjoyably bad? Can you think of one that we've looked at?
Through
The Last Grenade.
Yeah, that was bad. Yeah, me and
Stanley Baker.
When we did Merc Month, we weren't finding it hard to do Merc movies, but we didn't want to do like too many of the obvious ones first off, because we want to do Merc Month 2 next March. Merc Harder, yeah. So we watched The Last Grenade with Stan Baker, and looking from the trailer and the the poster, we think Stan Baker running around the jungle with Sterling in a Denison smock.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. We'll have a bit of that. And then it's just possibly one of the most disappointing movies we've ever watched.
Truly. Yeah.
An odd film.
There's a couple of good sequences.
Yeah. But
then there's a lot of that film that is just like,
we thought about
why is this in here?
We thought about doing commentary tracks for movies, for like the Patreon supporters. And that's one of the movies we thought about doing a commentary track on. Hold that thought with, we might do commentary tracks eventually.
But yeah, that's a good question, Brian.
That was a good one.
Tricky.
Yeah, tricky. Right. Next question comes from Dave Rees-Jones. And he says, with the remake of The Man Who Never Was being turned into Operation Mincemeat, what movie would you both like to see remade, and what actors as the main characters?
Wouldn't it be interesting to have a Longest Day remake?
That would be quite something.
I don't think we need one, but it would be interesting.
No.
So there's a caveat there. There's a lot of films that we probably don't need a remake of.
Yes.
For various reasons. Either it's just a subject that's been done to death, or it's a film that's timeless and doesn't need covering again, or, there's lots of reasons.
So I think we talked about it on the show we did about it, but I think a remake of Escape to Victory would work.
I don't know whether we need it.
But this is just for me answering the question.
Do we need it, Rob? Do we need that? I
mean, yeah, but you can remake it and make it a better film.
Yeah.
And think of all the superstar football talent you could get involved. It would be quite something.
I don't want to see Ronaldo trying out, though.
I think he'd do an all right job.
Yeah.
Because they're all far more media trained now, and they
Okay. What about a Yesterday's Enemy remake? Who would you have in that?
Okay. Well, so you'd ideally want to remake something that is a good movie, but isn't as maybe well known. So
yeah.
I mean, I think I'd probably put Tom Hiddleston for Stan Baker.
Okay, that makes sense.
Probably have, for the character George Jackson played, like the hard nut sergeant in it. I'd probably, it might be a bit old now for it, but I would either maybe have Mark Strong or Daniel Mays.
Mark Strong would be good, yeah. There's a whole generation of British actors that haven't had the opportunity to be
yet. No.
War movie
and
NCOs.
I think it's because it's too obvious that they haven't, perhaps. Like Tom Hiddleston and Benedict Cumberbatch. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch was in War Horse. And so was Hiddleston.
He was in 1917 as well, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, of course he was. But they've never been like main roles, have they? They've always been ancillary cameo pieces. So yeah, I'd like to see that.
Maybe a remake of All Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah, that always gets remade. So maybe that would work.
It does. Would you want? The last one was in the 70s with Ernest Borgnine. But yeah, that'd be interesting. Who could you get to play Borgnine's role, or the role of the NCO, the German sergeant?
I mean, you probably get Fassbender in. because he is.
I don't think he'd fit that role though.
Not fit the
I think
role.
he's got to be like.
I mean, I could pick you older actors who are too old, but I couldn't pick you actors that
There's
are
not
right
a lot
in
of
the right
actors.
age range.
Yeah. Rory Kinnear, perhaps.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what about Toby Jones?
He's not too old.
He's not
he
too
could play
old.
that role. Who would you have in the sort of like the protagonist role?
The young lad. Ace Battlefield.
Yeah.
I know it's obvious because he was in Journey's End, but I think he can still do a good job.
Yeah,
Timothy Chalamet, actually. Timothy Chalamet would do good.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is very much, as of now, isn't he? He's very popular right now. He'd be your bums on seats actor, wouldn't he?
He's youthful enough as well, isn't he? Next question.
Yeah.
Is from Roel van der Velde. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Roel. Has computer-generated imagery, CGI, ruined the war movie genre, or has it reinvigorated it? No more actual crashes like in Tora Tora Tora, but then again, powerful computerized scenes as in Midway.
I think no.
Double-edged sword.
I think it's enhanced it. I'll come out and say that now.
Okay.
Because there's things you can do way more easily that look way more real. Take Forgotten Battle, because it's recently in my head, because obviously we covered it last week.
Yeah.
If you'd have tried to do the horse sequence for real, your budget would have been gone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But because you choose to do it CGI, it might cost you a lot of money to make that because of hiring the artists and everything else and making the horse a set. But that looks 10 times better because of it. So movies that maybe don't have the money to hire a tank can get a CGI tank, or, you know, movies that want to mix CGI with model effects, like say 1917
or Panafloff is a great example of that.
You can
they
meld
did
the
a
two
lot
to
of
make
the practical and the CGI, and it looked great.
So I think it helps the lower level productions add things they might not necessarily be able to have, and then it only enhances the hundreds of millions of pound budgets.
I think so. I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword because it's almost like model work originally. So if you had a big budget, you could have some great model work. If you didn't have the budget, you'd end up with kind of ropey, like Action Man boats, tanks type thing. And you get that with when they haven't got a huge CGI budget, but they try and do a lot with it. So if you compare, once again, Rebels of PT 265 or whatever it is, and the guys on the deck look like matchstick men.
Yeah. They look like PlayStation 2 cutscene sort of levels.
Yeah. It's really bad. And then you compare that to Greyhound, it's night and day.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, then again, to a good war movie, model work could lift it, or could sort of like sap sort of some of the enjoyment from it if it looks really bad. And I think the same again is true for CGI. So you can have a really good sort of character piece that's augmented by some CGI that looks terrible, and it can really sap a film. So I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but I do agree that it gives filmmakers now a hell of a lot more license and ability to recreate stuff that would be next to impossible to recreate with any sort of budget nowadays.
So this next question comes from Two Ladders Productions, where he says, I would love to hear you talk about more about which are the worst declinist pop shots taken at the British war effort on film.
Okay, so sort of like the bit in Band of Brothers where the tank commander's sort of made out to look a bit stupid, and the bit in A Bridge Too Far where the guy says,
I think
for tea.
I think I'd choose those because they are the biggest swipes really for me recently.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's
not a great many to be honest. I can't think of.
I think this is where sort of I think I've seen Peter Caddick Adams chat about it a couple of times. It is just what market you're making the movie for.
Well, exactly. I was thinking then of Objective Burma, which everyone always said. You know, there was the big
Hoo-ha.
The big hoo-ha around being an American unit in Burma. But again, as you say, it's the market you're making that movie for.
Yeah, I think it annoys A Bridge Too Far annoys me more because now obviously doing the APA episode and things like that, and doing more research into the making the movie, they were trying to sell that movie in America, so there is more of a sort of, use that word again. There's more of a sort of a penchant for taking swipes at the British, because I think that movie does point the finger a lot at why it's almost like it's screaming at the audience, why are the British choosing to do this? This is a crazy operation. This will never work. I'm like, but yeah, the characters in that scene though don't know that it's not going to work yet. It's like the script has been written with hindsight, and I don't think it should have been.
Yeah.
And then obviously I just think in Band of Brothers, I think they should know better than to portray British tank cruisers idiotic and stupid. Yeah. Whereas in 44, they would know, I don't think a tank crew would be that naive.
No, they'd fall away from Normandy. They weren't soft.
Yeah, I think even if they are replacements, they would still have known. Yeah. They would have learned from their comrades. But for me, I think they're the two worst swipes.
I'd agree with that. I can't think of any that are worse than that.
No.
No, I can't.
I mean, same Private Ryan, where they say, with Captain Miller says Monty's overrated. Like, I think that line's been blown up out of the water a little bit, because I think it's such a sort of, he's just dismissing Monty, but he's just dismissing him in a sort of, well, he's fought from North Africa all the way to D-Day. So if he thinks Monty's overrated by that point in the war, then that's what he thinks, because he's been fighting for 2.5 years.
Yeah. So
I think people maybe miss that part of the film where Horvath fills a little tin full of sand and writes like France on it, and he's got one that says North Africa.
His knapsack.
So you learn from that bit that they've been fighting for a long time, and maybe they do think that. I can sort of see why, but I know why it irks people, because it's sort of dismissing the whole British war effort in a line. But if you narrow it down to the character, then perhaps that's not what the character's saying, but that is what the movie's saying. So you can make arguments for both.
Absolutely. The next question is from James Jeffries, and he asked, if you could make a film about anything, no limit to budget, what film would it be?
About anything?
Anything,
right.
Anything. I mean, I researched this when I was an undergrad, and I wrote a paper on it, and it was the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire.
Okay.
In 1911, there was a factory that made parts of a shirt for women.
Right.
In New York, and it was on like the top story of the building, and there was a fire. Someone dropped a match into a waste bin, and this fire turned out to be one of the worst industrial accidents in US history. So there was 150 women died, and the youngest was 14.
Wow.
And it's a horrific story, and it's what actually led to fire escapes being put on the outside of buildings.
Wow. Okay.
Because there was no way out for them except the elevator, so they couldn't get out. It was just a tragic event.
Well, that would be quite a harrowing movie.
Yeah, it would be. It totally. I don't know whether it's actually been done, but they must have made a movie about it at some point. But yeah, I think that'd be a really interesting event to cover.
I think I'd bring it to war movies again. But I would love. There's a movie that me and Matt love, and we always make. It's become a bit of an in-joke between me and Matt. But it's a film called Soviet Encounter, and it's a 1983, I think, or 84 British Army training film, and it's like it's a pseudo realistic what would happen, what would you do, or what you do if a Soviet armed vanguard comes over the hill, and you'll be AOR, and we're going to be interviewing. But I would love to make a narrative war movie about the BAOR fighting the Russians.
That would be amazing, like Hackett's book, but brought to screen.
Yeah. So, but leave nuclear warfare out of it.
Yeah, just the conventional conflict, and it would be a film about the British Army on the Rhine against Third Shock Army or whatever it was. Yeah, I'd love that. That'd be great.
That's what I want to do.
Because there's a few, isn't there? There's another one called Fighting in Woods, which is very similar, and they feel like they interlock, and you can probably like cut a whole film out of those
from these movies.
3 movies. Yeah.
Yeah,
that'd be great, actually.
That's what I'd do. Next question is from Ken, one of our Patreon supporters. He asks, what's a good movie with bad war scenes in the sense of accuracy / quality and vice versa?
Battle of the Bulge?
Well, as in it's a good movie with bad war scenes?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a good movie, but it's not a bad movie. It's got a good cast.
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
It could have had a better plot, but I'm just thinking about that tank battle. The Amblev scene isn't too bad.
I'm going to really probably annoy some people.
Okay.
But I think Angels 1-5 is a really great film.
Mm-hmm.
But the battle scenes in it just don't look right. Because obviously it's the first war movie about the Battle of Britain that they made.
Yeah.
So everything looks kind of wrong, but not the kit's wrong or anything. It just doesn't look right. So there's like a scene of them Heinkel's or the Dorniers dropping bombs, and they look really odd to me. So I would like perhaps...
Is it just the fact that the model work isn't great?
Yeah, but it sticks out like a sore thumb because obviously it's the first time they've done it. The cockpit scenes look good. The bit where the hurricane nearly crashes into the house doesn't look bad. But then at the end of the movie, when everything's sort of ramping, there's some little bits for me that just don't kind of look great. I'll probably say that.
Pearl Harbor, bad movie with some...
To switch it.
With some interesting little scenes. Like the broader stuff is, a little bit cringe, the way he's like, shouting from the cockpit and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, a bit crap in it, yeah.
But there's a couple of little bits in there that work quite well, in the set pieces. But yeah, that's a tricky question.
Bad movie with good war scenes then for me would be Wind Talkers.
Oh yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah,
because it's weird because it's not entirely a bad movie. I just think Cage is miscast. And the story of the Code Breakers is really interesting.
It is. Because
of the director and his pedigree. Like, it's just too bombastic at certain times. Just someone throw a grenade and it's like a napalm bomb's gone off. It's sort of like that. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure, that one, for me, actually.
I agree with that. What I appreciate about that film? Like, at the beginning, he has like an M1928 Thompson, and then later on he has an M1 Thompson.
Yeah, it's nice. So there is good things about that movie.
Yeah, there's good things in it. And
I wouldn't have penned Christian Slater for a grizzled sergeant, but he does a bloody good job.
He does, actually. It's like out of what you would expect him to be cast as. But
and another good movie with bad war scenes.
Ooh, we're on a roll now.
And I might split the room again, but I thought Hacksaw Ridge had all the elements of a good film.
Yeah.
But then the battle scenes for me were just done a bit weird, done a bit wrong for me. Like, I don't get Vince Vaughn as a soldier in a movie. He doesn't work for me. So then when he picked up that the body that had no arms and stuff and used it as a shield.
Yeah.
It was a weird choice.
Hacksaw Ridge is an interesting...
Yeah.
It's an interesting one to cover, I think, in the future, because I didn't want to watch that for quite a while. Like, I just thought it was going to be quite ropey.
I saw it when it came out, and I enjoyed it, but then I thought the battle sequences were just a bit subpar,
I know, there's something about them.
And it's not necessarily like the way that the production values of it, but it was just sort of some of the choices made by the director, by Mel Gibson, who shot it. I don't think we need Vince Vaughn using bodies as human shields and things.
Yeah, unless that was like something taken from an account.
Perhaps, but it just... No.
Yeah.
Didn't work for me.
I know what you mean. So next, we have Mark Hayden, who asked via the Facebook. Yes, Fighting on Film does have a Facebook page if you want to check that out. What book would you like to see made into a film?
I probably mentioned it before, but I absolutely adore Warriors for the Working Day. And I think that would make a fantastic film. Yeah, it's just a British tank crew from Normandy all the way up to the end of the war. It's just a great book with great characters. There's sequences where people go home. There's sequences where people get to reflect on themselves and the war. And there's just some great set pieces in that book that I think would make fantastic fantastic set pieces on screen. Not to ruin the book, but there's a section where they are fighting in the Ardennes, and they're learning about the comet. And while they're learning about the comet, the instructor, one of the other instructors, comes and goes, "Look, stop this, lads! You've got to get to Arnhem. You've got to get to the Ardennes because the Germans have pushed through." So they're brought up to reinforce, and they end up doing quite an important action within the book. And that sequence would be fantastic. I don't want to ruin the books. I think it's one people should listen to. It recently was turned into an audiobook by IWM because it was recently re-released by them. So if you can get that, I'd recommend it. One of my favorite books of all time, and I would absolutely adore an adaptation.
That one would be pretty up there for me. I agree. I mean, you mentioned the Imperial War Museum. They also recently published Anthony Quayle's sort of autobiographical novel, 8 Hours from England, and that's a look at his time in the SOE in Albania, Nazi-occupied Albania, and I think that would make a great story. Obviously, he never really talked about his wartime experiences, and the book represents like the best record of it's generally accepted. Yeah, it's generally accepted to be sort of a sort of fictionalized autobiography of his,
that's it,
experience there, and I think that would make a great book. But there's countless others. I mean,
Arnhem Lift.
I was about to say there's Arnhem Lift.
Fassbender could have played a great Louis Hagen a few years ago.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Same sort of vein. Victor Miller. Nothing is Impossible. That would make a great movie. Experiences in Arnhem and in Varsity. Yeah. So yeah, there's so many. Quartered Safe Out Here would be good actually as well.
That would be very popular.
George Donald Fraser. George MacDonald Fraser's sort of memoir about his time in Burma, because there's some great stuff in there. There's a chapter where he describes trekking for miles through jungle and marsh, because he's been tasked with cutting off the retreat of a Japanese unit. And they're moving downriver on like a huge raft or a boat, and he sinks the boat with a pier. That would be an incredible scene to see. Because he's literally sent with the pier because he's the only one that has seen it demonstrated. He's never fired one. But yeah, I found that account when I was researching for the book, and that whole book is really interesting. And obviously, he wrote the Flashman books.
Yeah, you could make a great ensemble movie using a book called War Report that was a compilation of all the BBC war correspondents reports from the Second World War.
You could do like an anthology.
That would be quite something. You Chester Wilmot, Stanley Maxted. I think it would make a great series.
It would be an approach that no one's done. Expects,
because we've had Ernie Pyle's movie in 1945 made, but that movie wasn't really about Ernie Pyle. It was about the men that Ernie Pyle were witnessing. Yeah. So having a movie purely from a war correspondent's point of view, I think would be very, very interesting. So yeah, they were all the questions that we found. If we missed you off, we're really sorry. Rounding out the episode, we have Team FOF, which we call our little band of this little band of people that run the show and make the show for you, called Team FOF in internal sort of messages and things. And we have our silent partner, who's my wife. She's the executive producer. She helps us out with. She does the website, the domain hosting, any technical issues that we have. Katie's on hand, and I asked her to ask us a question today. If your life was made into a movie, what genre would it be, and who would play you?
Not a clue. Not a clue. Oh my God.
I mean, I had a little think about it. I think it might be like maybe a comedy drama. And I'd probably someone like Kevin Bishop to play me, like a young Kevin Bishop, the comedian. Who would you get to? What would you do, Matt?
God, I don't even know. Like, I mean, obviously it would be an epic, but I have no idea what genre it would be. Hopefully, it would be like one of those comedies that isn't super funny or
like a coming of age type film.
Well, maybe, I don't know. That's tricky. That's a hard question. Yeah, hopefully it will be a comedy.
Yeah. So this is my question for Matt and an answer to. What would you have wanted to become a professional in if you hadn't become a historian or a defense editor?
A musician.
Well, okay.
Because I play guitar and a couple of other instruments, and I used to gig about a little bit, and I always really loved it. But yeah, I think I'd be a musician.
That'd be cool. So I'll answer it and finally become a carer / podcaster. You might come left field. It might not. Depends how well people know me. But I would have loved to be a football team's kit man.
Just the kitman.
Yeah, the guy who washes all the shirts, puts it all out in the morning. For some reason that job always I always looked at that job with rose tinted spectacles. So, but yeah, I always wanted to do that.
That's interesting. That's that is left field. That's really interesting, actually. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, no, I did think it would be great because it's like you're involved in the team. You get to go up and down the country, and I know it can be quite a long-serving job if you get it right. I guess it just always seems quite fun.
It's important, isn't it? People have got to have clean kit and sort it out. But yeah, it's a good question, mate. Yeah, I would love to still be a musician. Well, I am I still play, but
still do it.
Yeah,
you have to write some songs about
have it as a career. Oh my god, no.
The Piet ballad.
Wow.
So Matt, did you have a question to see us answer on?
Yeah. So, as it's Halloween in a couple of days as of recording and when this is released, what is your favourite war horror movie?
I watched this one when I was younger. I think when it came out, it was like 2002. I quite like The Trench with Andy Serkis and Jamie Bell. Yeah, because it's a bit of an everything horror movie, isn't it? There's like a weird monster in it of the Mudman. There's like the weird sentient barbed wire. It's a bit of a head fuck, isn't it? I quite enjoyed it.
I mean, that traumatized me when I watched that as a kid, I've got to say.
Yeah,
that's a good choice. I think mine's The Keep.
Okay. Yeah.
From
Directed
the 80s.
by Michael Mann, the same guy who did Heat.
I know. Yeah.
So weird.
Yeah, but it's an interesting one. That or obviously Death Trench 11.
I mean, that is a more recent one.
That's a terrible movie. So if you haven't listened to the Death Trench episode, then,
please go and do that.
And you really want a Halloween FOF episode, then check out last year's.
I'll retweet it.
Yeah, I think it was like our second or third episode.
It was our second episode.
Yeah,
it was. So I mean, that was the AMA. I mean, thank you to everyone who submitted a question. Sorry if
they were fantastic.
Sorry if we missed yours off or didn't catch it. Thanks to everyone for listening for the last year. I mean, as we echoed at the start of the show, we're amazed where we've gone and where we're going. We've got some things on the horizon which we're looking forward to sharing with you, and that they will come up. They'll be made apparent when they come up. So next week is a show and tell episode because Matt is on holiday and I'm on holiday, so we're putting out a show and tell that we pre-recorded.
A lot of these questions came from Patreon and social media. So if you'd like to get involved and chat with ourselves and everyone else that listens to the show, find us at Fighting on Film on Twitter, and we have a Facebook page as well. You can check out our website, fightingonfilm.com. And if you really enjoy the show, then please do consider supporting us via Patreon. Please do support us if you'd like to. And really, the best thing you can do is to share the shows with friends that love war movies. And I'll round out by saying thank you so much for listening for the last 12 months. Yep. And we'll see you next time.
It's the next 12 months. Yeah, it's the next year.
Cheers to that.
Cheers, and we'll catch you again next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.